There's something fascinating happening in the world of coffee. In Tokyo, young professionals are bypassing Starbucks for tiny coffee shops in back alleys. In London, historic Starbucks locations are losing customers to artisanal roasters. And in New York, well, let's just say the Green Mermaid isn't quite as magnetic as she used to be. This is a story about more than just coffee. In this Business Sherlock investigation, we'll look at how the biggest coffee chain in the world, with 38,000 stores serving 100 million customers weekly, is struggling to keep its cool. And to understand why, we need to go back to where it all began. Imagine America in the 1970s. Coffee was basically brown water that sat on a hot plate all day. No espresso, no lattes, just coffee. Then comes Starbucks, with a revolutionary idea inspired by Italian coffee culture. What if coffee could be more than just a caffeine fix? When Howard Schultz visited Milan in 1983, he saw something Americans had never experienced: coffee as culture. The result? Starbucks transformed from a coffee bean shop into something entirely new. America's third place. Not home, not work, but somewhere in between. By the 1990s, Starbucks wasn't just changing American coffee culture, it was going global. And here's where it gets really interesting. In Japan, they created special seasonal drinks like Sakura lattes. In China, they designed stores twice the size of American ones, knowing customers would stay longer. In Italy, well, they waited until 2018 to open their first store in Milan. Talk about pressure. In some places, it worked brilliantly. China became their second largest market, with over 6,000 stores. In Japan, Starbucks became synonymous with status and Western sophistication. But in others, not so much. They completely pulled out of Israel in 2003. Australia proved tough. Turns out, Aussies already had a strong coffee culture and weren't impressed by American-style coffee chains. And in Vienna, home of the traditional coffee house, Starbucks barely made a dent. Now, let's talk about how technology changed everything, and not always in the way Starbucks hoped. The Starbucks app was revolutionary when it launched. Mobile ordering, digital payments, loyalty points, they were ahead of their time. By 2024, digital orders made up over 25% of all transactions. Sounds great, right? Well, here's the problem. When you're trying to serve both in-store customers and a constant stream of mobile orders, something's got to give. Baristas call it the digital dilemma. How do you maintain quality and connection when you're basically running two separate restaurants from one kitchen? Starbucks' solution: more technology, artificial intelligence-powered inventory management, predictive analytics for staffing, even machines that can automatically alert maintenance before they break down. But here's the irony. All this automation was making Starbucks feel less personal, less human. And speaking of human, let's talk about what might be Starbucks' biggest challenge yet: their own workers. Starbucks used to be known as a great place to work. Health insurance for part-timers, stock options, college tuition coverage. They called employees partners, suggesting everyone had a stake in the company's success. But by 2024, over 500 stores had voted to unionize. That's 11,000 partners saying the old deal wasn't working anymore. The complaints? Understaffing, unpredictable schedules, the stress of managing ever-increasing mobile orders. And most importantly, a feeling that they'd become cogs in a corporate machine rather than valued partners. Starbucks' response to unionization efforts damaged their progressive image. Store closures that coincided with union activities, allegations of retaliation against organizers, former CEO Howard Schultz being called to testify before Congress. For a company that built its brand on ethical business practices, this was more than just a labor dispute. It was an identity crisis. If you really want to understand Starbucks' struggle, look no further than Gen Z. A generation that's reshaping coffee culture in ways Howard Schultz probably never imagined. For Gen Z, a coffee shop isn't just a place to grab caffeine. It's content. It's community. It's a statement about who you are and what you value. And this is where Starbucks has really stumbled. The numbers tell a striking story. By 2024, only 28% of Gen Z consumers called Starbucks their preferred coffee destination. Compare that to 46% of millennials just a few years earlier. But why? First, there's the environmental factor. Sure, Starbucks talks about sustainability. They've got those paper straws and reusable cup programs. But then their CEO, Brian Niccol, gets caught in a PR storm when it was reported that he'll regularly commute between California and Seattle by private jet instead of relocating. For a generation that takes climate change seriously, this kind of corporate contradiction doesn't fly. Pun intended. Then there's the labor issue. Remember those unionization efforts we talked about? For Gen Z, this wasn't just about worker rights. It was about corporate authenticity. When Starbucks, a company that marketed itself as progressive and worker-friendly, began closing unionized stores and allegedly retaliating against organizers, young consumers took notice, and they took to social media. And speaking of social media, when the Israel-Hamas conflict escalated in late 2023, Starbucks found itself in the crosshairs of a generational shift in how brands handle global issues. Their attempts to stay neutral backfired spectacularly. Boycotts emerged from both sides. But more importantly, Gen Z saw a company trying to play it safe when they wanted brands to take meaningful stands. For Gen Z, it's not just about what's in the cup. It's about the entire story behind it. They want to know, where did these beans come from? How are the workers treated? What's the environmental impact? And perhaps most importantly, does this company's values align with mine? Consider the Coffee Project in New York or Fluid Coffee in Chicago, small chains that have blown up on TikTok not just because their drinks are Instagram-worthy, but because they're transparent about their sourcing, vocal about social issues, and deeply embedded in their communities. They're everything Starbucks once was: authentic, community-focused, and cool. The irony? Starbucks wrote the playbook on ethical, community-focused coffee decades ago. But somewhere between store number 1 and store number 38,000, that message got diluted. For Gen Z, Starbucks increasingly represents what they're pushing back against: corporate capitalism dressed up in progressive clothing. Starbucks is trying to adapt. They've rolled out more sustainable packaging. They're experimenting with NFTs and digital collectibles. They've even started featuring small-batch reserve coffees. But here's the challenge. How do you convince a generation that values authenticity that you're authentic when you're the biggest coffee chain in the world? Perhaps most telling. Some Gen Z entrepreneurs aren't just avoiding Starbucks, they're opening their own coffee shops. And they're building them around everything Starbucks isn't: small, local, outspoken on social issues, and unapologetically authentic. Enter Brian Niccol, Starbucks' new CEO, facing a challenge that seems almost impossible. How do you make a global giant feel local? How do you maintain efficiency without losing your soul? His strategy? Embrace technology while trying to restore human connection. New store designs separate mobile order pickup from the cafe experience. AI helps predict staffing needs and manage inventory. They're even experimenting with blockchain to make their bean-to-cup story more transparent. But the biggest changes might be cultural. New training programs focus on coffee knowledge and customer connection. They're giving stores more freedom to engage with their local communities. And yes, they brought back the Sharpies for writing names on cups. Sometimes the smallest touches matter most. So, where does this leave Starbucks? With $32 billion in annual revenue, they're not going anywhere. But they're facing a fundamental question. In a world that increasingly values small, local, and authentic, can a global chain deliver what coffee lovers want Perhaps the real story here is about how our relationship with coffee has evolved. From Tokyo to Toronto, São Paulo to San Francisco, people aren't just buying coffee anymore. They're buying into an experience, a culture, a community. So next time you're deciding where to get your morning coffee, think about what you're really looking for. Is it just caffeine, convenience, or something more? Because in 2024, a cup of coffee isn't just a cup of coffee anymore. It's a choice about the kind of world we want to wake up to. What's your take? Are you team big chain or small shop? And what makes your perfect coffee experience? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the brands and businesses shaping our world.